I have to tell you something, and it will blow your mind. It did mine. You know shares, those pesky things that go up and down in value that fill most investments and pensions. They were invented here, in Toulouse. Yep, Toulouse was the birthplace of this tool of modern finance. I bet you thought it was London or New York. Not at all. It was us, here. Let that sink in. Toulouse is the very city where the very first modern share was created. Now, before you get all excited and quote your Google search, which actually reveals it was the Dutch East India Company being the first company to ever publicly list a share in the 1600s, blah, 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 well, let me correct you. Oh, and to prove it, we have written evidence. Thankfully for us, the dutiful creators of the shares kept records, and these have been verified by historians. I will show you that the first traded share actually started here, on the River Garonne, hundreds, yes, hundreds of years earlier. In 1372, in fact. The company still exists, albeit it was nationalised in 1946 to help France rebuild in the post-war era. Although no longer traded, this is one of the longest-running companies in global history. Told you I'd blow your mind.
Whoa.
And why am I telling you this? Well, because I am the original share, born in 1177. I was a share of the first organisation allowed by the Lord of the River, the Duraud Monastery, to establish mills there. 2 centuries later, yes, I was already quite old, I've been transformed into a share of the first modern corporation. I'll tell you more about me in a moment. But first, why was I born? Well, the ever-prolific conquerors, the Romans, had a problem when they died. Their properties would be passed down in equal shares between their heirs, male or female. Long after the fall of the Roman Empire, inhabitants of southern France continued to respect this rule. In the Middle Ages, castles had to be equally divided. In Merle, the castle was gradually divided into about 15 co-lords. Imagine dividing up a castle into 15 separate co-lords, all trying to build their own tower. Oh, and they did try. The problem with this method was, of course, that after a few generations it became completely unmanageable. These lords, however, were a canny bunch and soon, in some recorded cases, identified a new method: temporal division. They would share the castles pro rata like some sort of timeshare property, each having an allotted time where they could live there and lord it over the place. Of course, this too became impractical for them. It's hard to repress local peasants for only part of the year. A better solution was needed. So, estates would be carved into pars, equal theoretical, though not physical, splits or properties, so each person in fact became a type of shareholder in an organisation called a pariage. In fact, Andorra was created this way from a legal dispute that used this system to settle ownership. But to work, this system implied that an heir should be able to sell his share to get his money back. So, most of the time, the trading of the share was free, as well as any divisions of that share, to allow this system to work again for the following generation. I was born, as often things are, during a period of conflict. For once, though, not war. Business. Several lords had rights on the river and the banks around the Garonne River, and in 1177, 2 locations were particularly attractive for mills due to the fall of the Garonne River. The Duraud Monastery in Toulouse gave a deed of enfeoffment to the 2 groups of millers, who most likely operated on boats up until that point, to settle grounded mills. The Duraud Monastery, as the mills were on their land, would be paid an annual rent of 1 Toulousan shilling, or sol touza. But due to inflation, this soon became worth very little. The rent was mainly paid in flour, which suited all sides. These several millers and mills eventually, through pariages, merged to create a modern company called the Bazacle around 1372. Also, around this time, we saw the first known case of a hostile corporate takeover. A third group of mills had been established, but the Bazacle mill built a dam high enough to avoid this other mill's ability to enjoy the required fall of the river. Several lawsuits ensued, which eventually ended when the Bazacle company bought the shares of the third mill at a very low price. Brutal. This company, with numerous shareholders, was now almost definitely the first publicly owned company in the world. These shares could be traded with anyone who could afford to buy them and could be split between parties and, crucially, divided into smaller shares, as well as paying dividends to those who owned them. The shares went up and down in value depending upon production and other external factors, and profit would be paid in dividends of wheat. What a time to come into existence as the world's first tradable share. And this podcast will tell my long story. I'll show you how this system worked, how it was governed, and how it came to influence modern-day share trading. In future episodes, we'll cover some of the governance of these shares, the formation of the corporation, and how it was managed. We will also highlight some of the ups and downs of the Bazacle company and how the share ownership system saved it from the brink of collapse. In the next episode, we'll talk about how I was divided upon my owner's death and how dividends were paid to my owners for numerous generations. Welcome to the true history of the first share. A Toulouse story that's never been told before.